The billing alert arrived at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, flagging a payment discrepancy that would unravel everything I thought I knew about trust. I'm Sebastian Redwood, 42 years old, energy partner at a criminal defense boutique in New Orleans. 20 years of practice had taught me to trust numbers more than people. Numbers don't lie. They don't manipulate. They simply exist, waiting for someone skilled enough to read their story. The alert came through our case management system, a routine notification about a client payment that hadn't matched our billing records. Normally, I'd handle it in the morning. But insomnia had me reviewing files at my home office, and the red flag caught my attention immediately. Client account 4471B showed a payment of $15,000 received 3 weeks ago. Our internal billing showed the same amount as outstanding. The system had recorded the payment but somehow failed to apply it to the account balance. I pulled up the detailed transaction log. The payment had been processed through our standard merchant account. Bank records confirmed the deposit. Yet our trust accounting showed the funds as never received. This wasn't a simple bookkeeping error. Someone had manually adjusted the records after the payment cleared. I cross-referenced the client file. Fitzgerald Timberlake, a mid-level executive facing embezzlement charges. High-profile case. Significant media attention. The kind of client who pays promptly and expects results. The case management logs showed unusual access patterns. Someone had viewed Timberlake's file 17 times in the past month. Normal case activity would generate maybe 5 or 6 views during active litigation. I checked the user access records. Most entries showed my login credentials or those of my paralegal. But 3 entries displayed a different pattern: access granted through administrative override codes. Only 2 people in our firm had administrative access: myself and our internal auditor, Ophelia Timberlake. She'd joined us 18 months ago with impeccable credentials and a reputation for meticulous financial oversight. The timestamps on her access didn't align with normal business hours. Late evening entries. Weekend activity. Pattern suggested someone working when the office was empty. I pulled up our trust account reconciliation reports for the past 6 months. Ophelia had prepared everyone. Each report showed perfect balance. No discrepancies. No missing funds. Clean books that would satisfy any bar audit. But if the Timberlake payment had been received and not properly recorded, what other transactions might show similar irregularities? I began systematically reviewing client accounts from the past quarter. The work was tedious, requiring cross-reference between bank records, case management entries, and trust account ledgers. By 4:30 a.m., I'd found 3 more discrepancies. All involved payments that had cleared our bank account but weren't reflected in client billing records. Total amount, $47,000. Each case shared common elements. High-profile clients. Significant retainer amounts. Media attention that could damage our firm's reputation if payment disputes became public. The pattern suggested deliberate selection rather than random error. I needed to examine our complete financial records, but that would require accessing files stored in our office server. Information I couldn't retrieve remotely without triggering additional access logs. The smart move was waiting until morning, conducting this investigation during normal business hours, maintaining plausible deniability if my suspicions proved unfounded. But something about the precision of these discrepancies suggested time was critical. If someone was manipulating our trust accounts, they might be monitoring for unusual access patterns. My late-night investigation could already have triggered alerts. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no urgent messages. The office would be empty for another 4 hours. I dressed quickly and drove through the empty French Quarter streets toward our office building. The city felt different at this hour, quieter, more honest somehow, as if darkness stripped away the pretense that daylight encouraged. Our building's security system logged my entry at 5:12 a.m. I took the elevator to the 7th floor, where our firm occupied a corner suite with views of the Mississippi River. The office felt strange in the pre-dawn darkness. Familiar spaces transformed by shadows and silence. I made my way to my office without turning on the main lights. My computer terminal provided access to our complete case management database. I began pulling financial records for every client we'd represented in the past year. The scope of the discrepancies became clear within an hour. 12 separate instances of payments received but not properly credited. Total amount, $127,000. Every case involved clients who would be reluctant to pursue public disputes over billing irregularities. People facing criminal charges who needed our discretion more than they needed perfect accounting. Someone had been systematically skimming from our trust accounts while maintaining the appearance of proper bookkeeping. The scheme was sophisticated, requiring intimate knowledge of our billing procedures and client psychology. I heard the elevator chime from the lobby. Someone else was entering the building. The elevator doors opened at 5:47 a.m. Footsteps echoed down the hallway toward our suite. I minimized the financial records on my screen and opened a routine case file. The footsteps stopped outside our office door. A key turned in the lock. Fitzgerald Timberlake entered, carrying his usual leather briefcase and morning coffee. Our internal auditor maintained strict schedules, arriving early to review overnight transactions before the partners began their day. "Sebastian, you're here early." His voice carried no surprise, only mild curiosity. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd catch up on the Morrison case preparation." Fitzgerald nodded and continued toward his office. I watched him through my doorway as he settled at his desk and powered up his computer terminal. For 3 years, Fitzgerald had managed our firm's financial operations with meticulous precision. He joined us after completing his CPA certification and legal studies at Tulane. The partners trusted him completely with our trust accounts, billing procedures, and client payment processing. They sponsored my membership in exclusive legal organizations. Fitzgerald had recommended me for the Louisiana State Bar's Criminal Defense Committee. He'd vouched for my integrity during my partnership review. We'd worked late nights together preparing financial disclosures for complex cases. I returned to my investigation, pulling individual client payment records while monitoring Fitzgerald's activities through my peripheral vision. He appeared to be conducting his normal morning routine, reviewing overnight deposits, reconciling trust account balances, preparing daily financial summaries for the partners. The Morrison case file provided perfect cover for my research, a high-profile embezzlement defense requiring extensive financial analysis. I could justify accessing any database or financial record under the pretense of case preparation. The pattern became clearer as I examined individual transactions. Payments would arrive via wire transfer or certified check. Fitzgerald would process the initial deposit correctly, generating proper receipts and trust account entries. But within 24 to 48 hours, he would create adjustment entries citing processing errors or bank reconciliation discrepancies. These adjustments would transfer funds from client trust accounts to a general operating account. The amounts were always below $15,000, staying under federal reporting thresholds. The timing coincided with periods when partners were traveling or focused on trial preparation. Most sophisticated was his client communication strategy. He would contact clients directly, explaining that their payments had been, delayed in processing due to banking complications. He would request patience while the firm, resolved technical issues with our financial institution. Clients facing criminal charges rarely questioned such explanations. They needed our services more than they needed immediate payment confirmations. Fitzgerald exploited this vulnerability systematically. I found email records documenting his communications with affected clients. Professional language. Reasonable explanations. Promises of resolution within standard banking timeframes. The Morrison case involved a $45,000 retainer paid in 3 installments. Each payment had been subject to Fitzgerald's adjustment process. Our client believed his payments were still processing, while we'd actually received and redirected the full amount. By 7:30 a.m., other staff members began arriving. I needed to conclude this investigation before normal business operations commenced. The final piece came from our case management system's audit logs. Every transaction generated time-stamped records showing user access and modification history. Fitzgerald had been careful to conduct his adjustments during off hours, but the system captured everything. I printed the most damaging records and secured them in my personal files. The was overwhelming. Systematic theft spanning 18 months, affecting dozens of clients, totaling over $200,000. Fitzgerald appeared in my doorway at 8:15 a.m. "Sebastian, I need to discuss the Morrison account with you. There's been some confusion about payment processing." His expression remained neutral, professional, but something in his eyes suggested he knew I'd discovered his scheme. "What kind of confusion?" "Banking irregularities." "Nothing serious, but I want to ensure we're providing accurate information to the client." I studied his face carefully. 3 years of working together. Shared late nights preparing for trials. Professional recommendations. Trust built through countless small interactions. "I've been reviewing the Morrison financials this morning. Everything appears to be in order." Fitzgerald's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately. My office?" The invitation felt like a trap, but confronting him directly might force him to destroy additional or contact accomplices. "Let me finish this case preparation first. We can meet after the partners arrive." He nodded and returned to his office. I watched him through my doorway as he made several phone calls and accessed multiple computer systems. His movements seemed more urgent now, less methodical than his usual routine. At 9 a.m., I called Ophelia Timberlake, our senior paralegal and my most trusted colleague. She'd worked at the firm for 8 years and maintained detailed knowledge of our financial procedures. "Ophelia, I need you to secure backup copies of all trust account records from the past 2 years. Store them on an external drive and keep it locked in your personal files." "Is there a problem with our accounts?" "Possibly. I'll explain everything once I have more information." By 10 a.m., I had documented of systematic embezzlement, client fraud, and trust account violations. Fitzgerald had stolen $247,000 over 18 months while maintaining the appearance of proper financial management. The scope of his betrayal extended beyond simple theft. He had manipulated client relationships, exploited their vulnerabilities, and damaged the firm's reputation through his deceptive communications. I prepared a comprehensive report documenting every fraudulent transaction, every false client communication, every trust account violation. The would support criminal charges, bar discipline proceedings, and civil recovery actions. But first, I needed to protect our remaining clients and secure our financial accounts. Fitzgerald still had access to all firm systems and could potentially destroy or steal additional funds. The confrontation would have to wait until I could ensure he couldn't cause further damage. At 10:30 a.m., Fitzgerald knocked on my office door again. "Sebastian, we really need to discuss the Morrison situation. The client has been calling about payment confirmations." This time, his voice carried an edge of desperation that confirmed my suspicions completely. I looked directly at Fitzgerald Timberlake as he stood in my doorway. His usual composed demeanor had cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. "Come in and close the door," I said. "We need to discuss more than just the Morrison situation." He entered slowly, his eyes scanning my desk where I had arranged printouts of the fraudulent transactions. His face went pale as he recognized the bank statements and client communications. "I can explain everything," he began, but I raised my hand to stop him. "You convinced Morrison to withhold his $85,000 retainer payment while telling me he was experiencing financial difficulties. You then contacted him separately, claiming I had requested the funds be held in escrow pending case resolution. Meanwhile, you diverted his subsequent payments to accounts you controlled." Fitzgerald sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. The firm was struggling. I was trying to protect our cash flow. By stealing $247,000 from clients over 18 months? By creating false billing records and forging my signature on trust account transfers? His shoulders sagged. I never meant for it to go this far. It started with one client payment that I delayed processing. Then the market crashed and my personal investments failed. I needed time to recover the funds. You systematically defrauded 17 clients, Fitzgerald. You created elaborate schemes to convince them their payments were being held for legitimate legal purposes while you transferred their money to personal accounts. I opened the Morrison file and showed him the email chain I had discovered. You told Morrison that I was under investigation by the Bar Association and that holding his payment would protect him from potential complications. You used his trust in our firm to steal from him. I was going to replace everything, he said quietly. My investments were starting to recover. With what money? You've been living beyond your means for 2 years. The luxury apartment, the new car, the expensive dinners charged to firm accounts. You weren't investing anything. At 11 a.m., I called our managing partner, Ophelia Fitzgerald, to request an emergency meeting. She arrived within 30 minutes, accompanied by our external counsel for internal matters. Fitzgerald has admitted to embezzling client funds, I explained, presenting the documented. We need to immediately suspend his access to all firm systems and accounts. Ophelia Fitzgerald reviewed the financial records with growing alarm. This represents a complete breach of trust and professional responsibility. We'll need to report this to the Louisiana State Bar Association immediately. I've already prepared the necessary documentation, I replied. We also need to contact the Corporate and Professional Ethics Task Force. The scope of the fraud requires state-level investigation. Within 2 hours, State Economic Audit Supervisor Haley Rogers arrived at our offices with a team of investigators. They began a comprehensive review of our financial systems and client accounts. Mr. Timberlake, Rogers addressed Fitzgerald directly. You're facing criminal charges for theft, fraud, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent and consult with an attorney. Fitzgerald nodded numbly as the investigator secured his computer and office files. His law license would be suspended pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. The next 3 weeks involved intensive client outreach and damage control. I personally contacted every affected client to explain the situation and outline our restitution plan. The firm's malpractice insurance would cover most losses, but the reputational damage would take years to repair. Morrison was surprisingly understanding when I met with him in person. I suspected something was wrong when the communications became inconsistent, he said. Your direct approach now gives me confidence in the firm's integrity. The Louisiana State Bar Association filed formal charges against Fitzgerald within 30 days. The pro was overwhelming. Bank records, email communications, forged documents, and his own admission of guilt. During the disciplinary hearing, I testified about the discovery process and the extent of the fraud. Fitzgerald's attorney attempted to argue for leniency based on personal financial pressures, but the systematic nature of his crimes made such arguments ineffective. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, I told the disciplinary panel. Mr. Timberlake created elaborate deceptions over 18 months, exploiting client trust and damaging the legal profession's reputation. The panel unanimously voted for disbarment and recommended criminal prosecution. Fitzgerald received a 3-year prison sentence and was ordered to pay full restitution to all affected clients. 6 months after the initial discovery, our firm had recovered financially and rebuilt client relationships. The experience had strengthened our internal controls and enhanced our reputation for transparency and accountability. I established a pro bono program to help other small firms implement better financial oversight procedures. The legal community needed protection against internal fraud, and my experience provided valuable insights for prevention and detection. The Corporate and Professional Ethics Task Force used our case as a model for training programs across Louisiana. They credited our rapid response and comprehensive documentation with minimizing client losses and expediting the investigation process. But the personal cost remained significant. I had trusted Fitzgerald completely, sponsored his professional development, and considered him a close colleague. His betrayal had shattered that trust and forced me to question my judgment about people and professional relationships. The silence in his former office served as a daily reminder of how quickly trust could be destroyed and how vigilant we needed to remain in protecting our clients and our profession. 12 months later, I stood in my new office overlooking the French Quarter, watching morning light filter through century-old windows. The nameplate on my desk read, Sebastian Redwood, Managing Partner, I'd never expected to hold again. After leaving the firm, I'd spent 3 months consulting with the Louisiana State Bar Association on internal fraud prevention protocols. The work was methodical, analytical, and helped me process what had happened without dwelling on the emotional aftermath. In September, I opened my own practice, specializing in white-collar criminal defense. The irony wasn't lost on me. Defending the same type of crimes that had destroyed my previous partnership. But the experience with Fitzgerald had given me unique insights into financial fraud cases that other attorneys couldn't match. My first major client was a small accounting firm facing embezzlement charges. The case reminded me why I'd entered criminal defense originally, protecting people when the system seemed stacked against them. We won a complete dismissal based on prosecutorial misconduct. The legal community had embraced my transition. Former colleagues referred complex fraud cases to my practice, and I'd built a reputation for thorough preparation and aggressive advocacy. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed my career had ultimately refined my expertise. I work as outside counsel for firms auditing prior partnership conduct. The Corporate and Professional Ethics Task Force contracted my services for 3 major investigations, and State Economic Audit Supervisor Haley Rogers had become a trusted professional contact. Fitzgerald served 18 months of his sentence before being released on parole. I heard he'd moved to Texas and was working in construction. We never spoke again, and I felt no desire to seek closure or understanding. Some betrayals simply ended relationships permanently. The old firm had recovered completely under new management. They'd implemented the financial controls I'd recommended and hired a full-time compliance officer. My former partners occasionally sent referrals, maintaining professional relationships despite the circumstances of my departure. On quiet evenings, I sometimes thought about trust and professional relationships. The experience had made me more cautious, but not cynical. I'd learned to verify financial procedures more carefully and maintain appropriate professional boundaries, but I hadn't stopped believing in the possibility of honest partnerships. My new practice employed 2 associates and a paralegal. We'd established clear protocols for financial oversight, client communication, and case management. Everyone understood that transparency wasn't just policy. It was survival. The silence in my office felt different now. Not empty or haunting, but peaceful. I'd rebuilt my career on my own terms, helped other attorneys avoid similar betrayals, and found purpose in protecting clients who faced their own moments of crisis. The morning sun-illuminated case files spread across my desk, 3 new fraud cases, and a consultation request from a firm in Baton Rouge. The work continued, but now I approached it with hard-earned wisdom about human nature and professional responsibility. I closed the last file and looked out at the bustling street below. People hurried to work carrying their own secrets and struggles. Some would face betrayal, others would commit it. The legal system would process their conflicts with varying degrees of justice and mercy. But in this moment, in this office I'd built from nothing, surrounded by work that mattered and relationships based on mutual respect rather than blind trust, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.